This conference will now be recorded.
All right, let's begin. If you would please, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum present. All commissioners are present except for Danny Krigler. We need to take a look at the agenda, see if we need to make any additions or changes. Anyone see anything we need to change?
Chairman, I recommend we approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we need to take a quick look at the minutes from the April 19th workshop meeting. I do see a couple things I have questions about. Let's see if we have any other questions about it. Okay, on the third page where it's talking about the Lothcal renewables, there's, let's see, 4 paragraphs down. The last line of the paragraph, there's a statement that says there would be no overhead lines, all would be underground. Does anyone remember that statement being made? I remember a mention of that, but not that direct statement.
I remember the statement saying it could be overhead or
Yeah.
underground.
Right.
I would suggest that that last sentence just be deleted. On the following page, with Mr. Helmy's case, again, the last paragraph, the second sentence, there's a statement that there would be one septic and well system. I'm not sure if that was, that kind of implies it's just a single septic field, which I don't think is what he said. Does anybody have any comment on that?
Mr. Chairman, I think from what I remember, the question was if each unit or tent would have that, and he said no, that it would be one. That's how I understood it.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah, but, well, we probably need to discuss that afterward. Okay. Anything else, any other comments or questions? With changes, yes.
Move to approve with the 2 suggested changes.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, as we get started, again, as well always, we will read each case as we get to them. Mr. Webb will add anything and answer any questions that the commission has. We will have give the applicant a chance to address the planning commission, Following that, there will be time for public comment. And it looks like at this point, we probably will have to request that public comment be no more than 3 minutes for each speaker, obviously in terms of how long it's going to take. I think we're getting high-tech here. I think we have a timer system now that we can display on the monitor. Is that correct, Ligon?
I got one.
Okay. So when we get to that point, we will put that kind of up in the corner of the screen so that the speakers will have something they can gauge their time with. All right.
Website.
First public hearing is case number SU-05-23-05. Mr. Thomas Warman has applied for a special use permit to construct and operate mini storage units on a roughly 2-acre portion of a 2.5-acre B1 business zoned parcel. In the B1 zoning district, mini storage units are allowable by special use permit. The total number of mini storage units would not exceed 200 individual storage units and consist of up to 8 storage buildings or structures. If approved, the applicant would be required to submit an official site plan to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and approved by the Board of Supervisors. The subject parcel is improved by an existing commercial building which is currently utilized for retail and office use. This commercial building contains roughly 2,800 square feet of floor area and has a postal address of 1235 North Seminole Trail, Madison, Virginia. The parcel is also identified on Madison County tax maps as 40-104E. Ligon, anything to add there?
I know we've talked about this for a couple months, and I think we've gotten some good questions, and I think most things have been answered. We've seen I'll just go to the conceptual layout for right now. We've seen something like this. If you look at the conditions, this would be limited to the 200 units and the number of structures, the 8 structures. This, what's shown here could change a little bit, when it kind of start doing the hard engineering and stormwater management. But I think this general layout will probably hold when you see the site plan. If you look at the conditions, one of the conditions to buffer some kind of planting that would come with the site plan between the adjacent parcels to the rear and to the sides. So, something like this is one of the conditions. The only thing that still sort of is up for negotiation, if you look at the letter from VDOT, and I have talked to VDOT folks, and let me just find where we are here. If you look at the conditions that I put in the packet right here, and I'll zoom in on these a little bit. Obviously, it's transferable along with the land. We have 8 mini storage units contain up to 200 individual mini storage structures, up to 200 individual storage units. This is if you did get a chance to read this, the existing entrance here, as you can see, there is a taper lane, and I'll just turn this map on. That right here is going to this parcel is a taper lane that runs along here. This is what would be preferred. And then right in here, as shown in one of the visuals, I know you've seen there'd be a cut right here where traffic could use this taper lane and come in here. Now, storage units are not a heavy traffic generating use. I think the number that I used, and we used this on Mr. O'Bannon's, seems to be an accept number somewhere around 7-8 trips for 100 units. So if you notice right here, there's a 7-Eleven that has the exact same configuration, and I can tell you that gets quite a few trips. So developing this rear portion storage unit, even with 200 as laid out, I don't really see it as a heavy traffic generator. Now, the VDOT did, I talked to Mr. Bedsall, Mr. Wilson, our contacts at VDOT, They also said there's what's called an access management exception, that this could be utilized. I don't know what that would change with that intersection. I don't know what else you could do to it, but it would be eligible and would probably receive one. I think it's also an option tonight just to approve it as it is, and if they can work out something with the adjacent property, which I know they've talked, this still stands true, all of this. It's really up to the prerogative of the Plan Commission recommendation and the board to make that decision. I think as written, this is fine, leaves room for the applicant to work with the neighbor and see if they can come to an agreement with the shared entrance, put that cut in, or they can apply for the access management agreement. And that would all be before we get a site plan. So I think those are both acceptable, or third option is just to, let them negotiate. If you can't get it, you can just use that entrance that's already there. Again, I just look at the 7-Eleven that generates a lot more traffic that, doesn't have a turn lane. And plus, you're right there before you get to the stoplight, so traffic is already slowing down. It's a lot of sight distance. You're just making one movement out to leave that. So overall, I think it's a pretty manageable access point. Then you have, of course, the conditions here on buffering, and of course, we get this official site plan. When we do get that at a later date, that's when we're going to get things like stormwater management, site engineering, and all those things will come, sort of what I call the hard engineering of the project. So, any questions for me on this right now?
I got one, Lincoln.
Sure.
So is this site plan gonna come before this, or just in front of the building?
Yeah, it would not be administrative. It'd be over 40,000 square feet, so it would have to come back to the Plan Commission and the board.
Can you go back to the picture that shows the aerial view, please? Yeah. Where you have one with the outline. That one's not too bad. But, so, this, condition number 4 that has the buffer around it, when you look at this picture, I would agree to having a buffering over on the side where the Remax is. But he's gonna have to put up a buffer from woods on at least 2 other sides, all the way down it. Is this something that we're gonna probably start doing with, it's a business over here on the south side. It's just gonna take up some kind of pavement or whatever you might be able to use for.
I think, do we have a rough size? I think he could probably would just simply leave some of the existing vegetation on this
Running
side.
all the way down that side.
Right.
Across the back and.
I would think 5 to 10 feet would be more than adequate on
Because it really
either
didn't
side.
specify the buffer
Right.
anyway.
And that's something we'd look at the site plan, but,
Well, that's what I was kind of getting
yeah.
at, is we could just kind of approve that at the site plan.
that's right.
So would you want to eliminate number 4 or just leave it as it is? Because if you leave it as is, he's got to do it.
I don't see any issue with eliminating it on this particular, on the 40-104C. I don't see any problem with that. I think he might want to buffer, this back area probably with the stormwater, because since it kind of falls off this way,
Is
so,
that a creek in the back or not? I didn't walk all the way back to the back, but I did walk kind of. I'm sorry? 2 creeks in the Okay.
I would be inclined to take the part out about the buffer. I'd like to see that stay in there, and then, and site plan review, we might even want to beef the buffer up. We're gonna be able to see a whole lot more about, once the site plan is drawn, how much is left there versus how much is there now. So I think I would want to leave that there, so we would definitely have an opportunity maybe to beef that up, because I think it's very important to protect the neighbors behind it and the people that own the property next door to it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Pete, and I wouldn't look at using the neighbor's existing trees there now as any part of what is required for the buffer on the property either.
Okay, any other question for Ligon?
I asked this just a question kind of last time, and I would kind of like to know there a used car lot going on there now? Is there gonna be a used car lot there?
I'll let Mr.
Well, that's.
If it's,
let's-
well, I'll let him talk in a minute. We want to wait just a minute. I have talked to the owner, one of the individual about used cars there, but when I went to pictures, there were maybe, there weren't that, well, maybe 5, 6, or 7, but I don't know if the cars are coming in or out. I don't remember signing, because usually, it is allowable. But I usually, the DMV will send a zoning verification, this is being used for a car lot, is it allowable? And then I'll ask, can you give me some kind of site plan or something? I don't remember that coming to my office, but, maybe.
Mr. Chairman? Sure. I would just add I'm gonna try to be loud enough because I'm not by the mic, that staff should contact the owner. There is a sign up on that marquee below the CBD. I think it's called Exclusive Auto Sales. So we should clarify that, because if it's a sign up, to me, that says yes. So we'll reach out to, I don't know if it's Mr. Workman or who the person is, but I'd recommend staff go back and get an answer to Mr. Elliott's question, because the
Yeah.
signage is there.
Yeah, and there was a business there at one time some years ago.
Well, if there's another activity going on along with what this is gonna be, I just feel that we need to know it, and we certainly need to collect the tax dollars.
Agreed, Mr. Elliott. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, one point, and this relates
sir.
to something Mr. Elliott said a moment ago. With regard to paragraph 4, if the planning commission and ultimately the board has a position as to the width of the vegetative buffer, rather than keeping that a secret, I think it might be appropriate that we include that at this stage. Now, on the other hand, if we are uncertain as to what that buffer might be, we just make a note of that so that whenever that issue comes up for the site plan, we're aware of it. But, I just don't think it would be fair to the applicant if we suddenly decided that the vegetative buffer had to be 30 feet wide.
And the reason why I asked that question, Mr. Wade, is because of the fact that going down through there, there's places where the buffer would be real thin, and then there's growth there. And
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure that we had some way of filling in the gaps where the growth wasn't. I don't think we can, I'm not looking to make a huge buffer. I don't know how we need to word it, but at the same time, I want to make sure that all those holes get filled when we went down through there, because there's not enough growth there to have to do that.
For what it's worth.
Thank you. Any other question for Ligon? I do have a quick question then. At the last workshop, Ligon, an adjoining landowner brought up the question about an existing drain field somewhere on this property. Do you know if that is true or if there is one?
Yeah, there is, and I did send Emily a email. I believe it's right behind here, but regardless, that's something that we can,
Well, clearly you can't build your,
right, I mean, you have to be
Storage
10 feet off of it. I mean, I don't think it's gonna get in the way, but you are required before you can get a building permit and do the site plan, he'll have to know where that is and be sure that he's at least, as the code, state code requires, 10 feet.
You can build a road over it.
That's a good question. I recommend not building a road over it.
That eats up, I know, I watched that drain field go in a long time ago, and that drain field eats up a lot of that property behind that building.
Yeah, if you're looking at coming in on the side here, to me, it looks like it, I can walk the side, but I don't think it would have any really issue on the cars coming in on the side, or either way, they're going to come in on this side or this side. So I believe it's right in this area.
it would have been kind of useful to know that specifically tonight, but, okay. Any other questions for Ligon? All right, in that case, any questions for the applicant? And if you would identify yourself and,
Ladies, gentlemen, hello again.
Is the
John
mic-
Connell.
is the
I'm
mic
here for,
on?
Tom Warren.
is your mic on there? Hello?
Thanks, sir. Yeah, my name is John Connell. I'm here for Tom Warman.
we have any questions for the applicant's representative?
John, I just have one for you because I didn't take good notes last time. What's the width of this parcel?
It is approximately 163 feet.
163, thank you, sir.
And just so everybody knows, I actually did meet with Kevin McCaney, Mr. McCaney here, just about 45 minutes ago. He's the adjacent property owner. We opened up some dialogue between us, and we're still in discussions on the best way to proceed with the entrance.
Any other questions?
How wide a buffer would the applicant be willing to provide?
I'm not sure I have
On
the
each
answer to
side.
that right now. I'd have to talk to Mr. Warman about that.
Ligon, are the surrounding parcels are all B1 or are they A1? What are the surrounding parcels? And so, in other words, what setbacks are being required by ordinance?
So in the B1, they just proposed the setbacks.
Okay,
Only the one that has to be required is to the rear, it'd be 50 from the rear. I mean, I would think, if you want to say, up to 10 feet, that would probably, for a buffer, that would probably be more than adequate. I mean, he's probably going to at least be 20, 25, 30 feet off the property lines anyway before he builds any structure. So I think if you just want to say up to 10 feet, if you think it's worthy of stating in the conditions, I don't see any reason why that would hurt.
any other questions?
What's the setback requirement on B1 from the sideline?
Again, it's just one, it just proposed, this is not a street, this is a driveway, so, I mean, they're showing it probably, it looks like they're showing about 30 feet to the buildings, but there's not a required, the only one that's required would be the rear, that'd be 50. You can kind of see here, these buildings, are pretty,
Yeah, everything there is B1 then, except for the back parcels.
That's correct.
Behind them, okay. And they're all A1?
yes, yep, yes, sir.
Okay.
I believe right here it says, in the buildings are 45 feet on the side.
From any street.
Right, but this is,
Yeah.
this kind of meets the definition of driveway, so,
Street right away,
Accessory buildings must be 10 feet or more from the side or rear.
yard regulations. Okay, yeah, none except when permitted uses adjoins or is adjacent to residential unit. Okay, yeah. And that's the 50 feet.
So I believe that's B1 on both the left and the right.
Yeah.
that's right.
And just A1 in the back.
And in the back, we're going to have a retaining pond or,
That's the plan, sir. Yes, sir.
okay. Since the neighbor has mentioned the fact that there are two streams back there, I think that's something worth considering. That's going to require some careful design, because you're going to be having groundwater running off from the buildings and the pavement. Okay, any other question for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, at this point, any public comment will be asked for. And again, if you would try to keep to about 3 minutes, and Ligon, if you would set up our new fashioned timer here, so.
I won't take 3 minutes.
Yeah, identify yourself, please.
Ron Hauser, I own the property to the rear, and I just want to come to here to listen tonight, but I was a little concerned when the first attempt was to remove the buffer requirement, which is highly concerning to me, because if you take that portion out, that I see from my residence off the Clore Road straight into 29 if you take those trees down. And if you don't have that buffer zone back there, that's what's stopping the ground runoff from all those businesses down, 7-Eleven and the other businesses. There's a fair amount of trees and whatnot that go back and join our property. We've left that overgrown on purpose for that purpose. But if you expand that view back out, you'll see I have a pasture there with cows and whatnot, and we'd really like to keep some sort of buffer zone and not have the board remove that requirement. Or at least make sure it's something there. Now, did I understand it's a 50-foot setback from the property line there? When these, but one of the pictures, the diagram, the proposed pictures show it goes right up to the property line. And there is no buffer or vegetation in those photographs and included in this. Would that be included at the end of the day?
I think it will have to be, won't it, Ligon, in the site plan?
Yeah, it would have to have from the rear, and we're saying that there has to be a buffer, we're just not putting a size unless they want to
As
add.
the joint landowner, I'd really like to know what that buffer is.
Yeah.
Those flipping of coins doesn't work out too well usually. So is it going to be a definite or not? Is there a county ordinance that says what the setback is from the rear? I thought I heard somebody say it was 50 feet. Now you're saying it's not?
It's 50 feet from the
So
rear.
it will be
freeway.
50 feet. It's not up for negotiation.
Nope.
And the holding pond that you had mentioned, have you looked at that property? How are you going to put a holding pond there above those creeks? It's downhill the whole way.
Well, I'm not the engineer, but have to be designed by a
And
licensed
that's going to be a
engineer.
requirement?
Yeah, I mean, however the engineer designs the retention, the storm
And that
retention.
would be back from the 50 feet, so there'll be a 50-foot buffer and then a holding
No,
pond?
I mean, the pond, that could be in the buffer area.
Then why does a buffer area if you can put a pond in it?
Well, it's really free of structures and obstruction, things like that. I mean, it's,
So then the vegetation requirement in number 4 is non-existent as well for the rear. I'm seeing conflict.
no, it's really hard.
I just want to make sure there's no
He can buffer,
contradictions.
I mean, he can buffer, I think, we come up with a number here of 10 feet around the entire property. I mean, that's adequate. We could wait till the site plan comes and just decide what the engineering and everything sort of looks like and see
So
what's
that's 10
most
feet.
logical.
Of vegetation, but does not detract from the 50 feet of the setback.
No, the 10 feet buffer would be part of that 50 feet, would be, part inside that, 10 feet of the 50 would be, vegetative, if that's indeed what, you wanted to add, but whatever that,
Somebody want to add, I just want to make sure, I want to know
Right.
what it's going to be. I mean, I haven't heard a definite answer. Is it 50 feet total, or, I just
okay,
want to know,
it has to be 50, it has to be set back 50 feet from the rear.
okay?
The buffer is to be determined at the site plan, or if the plan commission would like to put a definite number on
The
it now.
buffer you're talking about is for vegetation.
Well, they're kind of the both. The 50 has to be set back 50 feet, all structures 50 feet. And do we want to?
It doesn't have to be 50 feet of vegetation, just.
No, it doesn't have to be. I mean,
And then the holding pond could be inside of that,
yes.
which, and this site plan will, or whatever, will determine whether that runoff will affect my creeks that we use.
It'll have to be an engineered stormwater management plan.
I didn't mean to use 3 minutes, I'm sure it's there.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah.
We have
Ligon,
4.
Do we have that timer on the screen? Oh, okay. I
Sorry.
see it up there, okay.
He went 4 minutes, it's fine. Yeah, just to clarify, the site plan is really when you get in, I mean, it's important to get the details now, but the site plan is really where we get into the hard engineering of the site. We know we have to have 50 foot in the rear. If you want to come up with a number of that 50 feet, does 10 foot, have to be vegetative? And that's something that we can determine. We've said that there needs to be some vegetation around the edge, but how much? I mean, we can decide that now or just decide it at the site plan.
Okay. Other public comment?
Good evening, everybody. Kevin McCaney, Madison. Glad to be here tonight. I just want to give props to our health department, who does a pretty good job of keeping records of septics and wells. And so if you check in with them, they'll have those records to you, as they do with me all the time, in about a half an hour. They're great. They're better than any other county around in doing that. So in pulling those records for that property, I can tell you what the setup is. On the left side of the property, as you're looking from 29, right along and behind the left side of the property is 2 septic tanks and 3 D boxes. So if you're going to really go back through there, you have to go through 2 septic tanks and 3 D boxes just to access the back of the property.
On the right side, there are two wells. One well that services the building and another that services my building. Now, the one that services my building is actually right on that line. Just want to put that information out there so that everyone can sort of have a little bit of an idea. And basically the whole area that is cut down and doesn't have trees, that's the drain field. So it's a pretty significant sized drain field back there too. And that's sort of what my comment was last time. Gosh, you know, between those cars back there for the car dealer that's in the parking lot, and then all that drain field back there, you start gobbling up a lot of that lot. So just word for thought. So thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this? Okay,
So, Ligon, excuse me.
yes, fine.
So, talking about the drain field and whatnot, so when the health department comes in and says, okay, now you've eaten up X amount of property here for the drain field and wells and whatnot, we're allowing him up to 200 units as space allows.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's taken up whatever, how much space, it may not have room but for 150.
That's right.
So we can approve it the way that it is, up to 200, and then whenever.
If it has to
whenever it's
downsize, you know,
allowed, or whatever
yeah.
each space is not allowed is what it is.
Right, and that's what I think it's what up to, for that exact reason. If it has to be scaled back, then, you know, so be it.
Do we have an estimate, Ligon, of the amount of land disturbance required to build these? So whether it triggers the DEQ or not, or how's that going to play into this wastewater management and stormwater management?
Yeah, I mean, this lot is not quite, you know, it kind of tapers here. It really is more square, what's on record. But if you can see here, I mean, just measuring right here, I mean, you know, if you come from here, say if you just back off from the drain field, it's right in there. I mean, that right there is 1.8 acres. So, right, I mean, if you came back, I mean, you're well over an acre. So it will require stormwater, and DEQ will review the stormwater plan, and
That should give the adjacent landowner a little bit of hope then that there'll be some.
I mean, it's going to have to be an engineered plan that meets DEQ review, and DEQ will review it themselves, so I would feel pretty comfortable with it.
Anyone else have any question for Ligon or any other comments? All right, does anyone want to make a motion at this point? I think we're a little bit uncomfortable with the lack of information on a couple of these things.
I'm comfortable making a motion.
Okay, if you would.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that case number SU-05-23-05 be recommended for approval to the Board of Supervisors with conditions and a 10-foot buffer as condition number 4.
You want to just add, that'd be at least a 10-foot vegetative buffer?
10-foot vegetative.
Vegetative buffer.
I'll just add, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, motion's been made. Any second? All right, any other discussion, or if not, can we have a different motion? Mr. Gregg, yes.
It may be appropriate to simply indicate that the motion has failed for lack of a second, and then invite the remainder of the planning commission to make a motion.
Okay.
I would encourage the planning commission to take some action on this, whether it's to accept it or reject it, so that the Board of Supervisors has something to work with.
Okay, motion having failed due to a lack of second, do we have another motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not making a motion, but I just want to say that there's nobody in Madison County that supports business any more than I do. Just too many unanswered questions here from me.
I agree with you again, Pete. I would make a motion to recommend denial. I don't think I've ever heard anybody make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Based on lack of available information.
Any second for that motion?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Maybe we better show of hands. All in favor, show your hands. 3, 4. Okay, 4. All opposed?
For the record, Mr. Chairman, it may be appropriate to identify those who are voting
Okay.
in favor. I see Mr. Elliott,
Mr. Elliott,
I believe Mr. Cowan,
Cowan,
Mr. Carpenter, and Mr.
Mr.
Graves.
Graves. All opposed? Mike, you abstaining? One abstention, okay.
I see one opposed, that's Mr. Snyder.
Yep.
And Fay Oots did not vote. He is abstaining.
Okay. All right, that being the case, we have 4 votes to deny, recommend denial of case number SU-05-23-05. All right, case B, as you notice, has been delayed until next month. The next case is case number SU-05-23-07. Mr. Ahmed Helmi has applied for a special use permit to operate an event venue on an A1 agriculture zone parcel. In the A1 zoning district, an event venue use is allowable by special use permit and is required to adhere to Articles 14-18 through 14.18.4 of the zoning ordinance. The applicant is seeking a special use permit to allow the entire 189.8 acre parcel to be utilized for the following uses: up to 120 individual short-term lodging units. Lodging units would be cabin and/or tent-style units, and no cabin or tent would exceed 700 square feet of interior floor area. A spa, tent, or structure not to exceed 600 square feet of interior floor area. A lodge building containing a reception area and a restaurant/bar. The lodge building would not exceed 7,000 square feet of interior floor area. A maintenance/housekeeping building not to exceed 3,500 square feet of interior floor area. An employee housing building not to exceed 6,500 square feet of interior floor area. A storage shed not to exceed 1,200 square feet of interior space or floor area. And a pavilion not to exceed 3,500 square feet of interior floor area or space. The applicant has proffered a conceptual site layout/design, and the special use permit conditions eliminate large-scale outdoor events as an allowable use. The 189.8 acre parcel does not have a postal address, but is located on James City Road, Route 612, roughly 0.6 miles from the intersection of James City Road and North Seminole Trail, US 29, and is identified on Madison County's tax maps as 33-9E. This request also includes a second adjoining undeveloped parcel containing roughly 0.47 acres identified on Madison County's tax maps as 33-8A. This parcel would be utilized as the principal means of ingress/egress to the site via Kirtley Road, Route 631. All right, Ligon, I think it would be appropriate to go through especially the conditions right now.
Yeah, I'll just go over a few things in the report. This is, we've had a couple work sessions, we've discussed this. Obviously, Mr. Helmi was here several months ago with a similar request, a different part of the county, which was denied. I think when we talked about the last, we had an extensive conversations on the 1 Ford shop, and we kind of left that, I think, at least I did, I think a lot of the Plan Commission left that as the general idea was supported. In the last few years, we really have seen a push for a lot of these agritourism, event venues. Even though it is event venue, there are, as part of the conditions, it would not hold large-scale events. But, over the years, we have had several proposals, not many this big, but tourism-related has been something that we have had a lot of discussions and hearings, many small-scale in nature. But I think when we left here a few months ago, the idea was we really just needed a better site. And I even recommended that one that had maybe more convenient access to a major transportation route like 29 would be ideal. It just happens that here we are, less than a year later. From my perspective, this site does offer a lot of advantages that were not in the last site, namely the access, the relative sort of isolated nature of the site, the ability to buffer. Obviously, it's a larger request, but we're also looking at a much larger parcel. I mean, you did read the number of structures. When you go over the site plan, this site plan that's been presented to us would be sort of part of the zoning if this is approved with these conditions and these, I believe, 19 or 20 different conditions. I think one of the big sort of questions is traffic. In our conversations with VDOT, I did look at traffic counts. If you look on Kirtley Road, the average annual daily traffic count is 80. I sort of speculate that maybe that doesn't catch some of the winery traffic. Of course, you have kind of the winery drive, but depending on where those tubes are set up. But if you set it right there in the middle of Kirtley, Kirtley just under a mile, 80 trips is very low volume, but obviously it's sort of a design for a rural local road. Now, if you just step out there on 29, you're looking at 16,000 trips on that section of 29 with a peak hour of 1,280. So your highest 1 hour on 29 is 1,280. Brian Gordon did pull traffic accidents for the last 4 years on Kirtley. We have one accident in the last 4 years, and that actually originated, it appears, on 29. They pulled into Kirtley, and that's where the call was, and it was a relatively minor. So not a lot of traffic. That is as far as sight distance, you can cross over there at Kirtley and 29, kind of where the Winery Drive is. The applicant did provide engineered estimates of peak traffic. I'll always sort of point out that estimating traffic counts is sort of a little bit tricky, but I think the peak trips at capacity, looking at maybe bring 40, 50 peak trips, maybe at full capacity at the highest 1 hour. I think that's probably a good number, maybe a little bit high. And again, I always think of traffic as, what is at full capacity that for 4th of July weekend, Memorial Day, when it would tend to maybe be full. Still looking at, I know I had said 400 to 600, but as I sort of estimated that and looked at what campgrounds generate, I think you're still looking at probably 250, 360 as a total daily traffic, with maybe that 50 traffic count being the peak hour, the highest 1 hour. Maybe people checking in, checking out. I think that's probably a pretty fair estimate. VDOT, you can see their comments. They're comfortable with the entrance. It would need to be a commercial entrance. And again, when we get a site plan, we can get an engineering design on that entrance. But really with the commercial entrance, you're looking at width, radius, so cars can pass. There is, as you can see from the pictures, very good sight distance in either direction. So I think VDOT's comfortable with the request as far as, and again, you can see the letter from them. The applicant has indicated at build out, and a sort of little sidebar here. I think that ideally the applicant has indicated 3 to 5 years would be an ideal build out time, but this really is dependent on market forces. And in my experience in dealing with projects of different various projects, maybe not necessarily campgrounds. I really think that, this could be something that could take easily more than 3 to 5 years. I don't want to speculate, but there have been similar projects that I worked on many years ago that are just coming to fruition. So I don't think it's a situation where if this special use permit is approved, that you're going to see this campground necessarily develop, full build-out in a short amount of time. They generally do take, amount of time to sort of get momentum, build out, and maybe potentially in some phases. But I know the applicant would hope that maybe that 3 to 5 years would be ideal. I just sort of looked at from a tax revenue, try to do a kind of real rough estimate of what the land value might be, conservatively estimating transit occupancy taxes at 50% revenue, even at a rate that I believe is probably much lower than would be charged. In other taxes like machinery or tools taxes and equipment on site, I did not include. A conservative number would be between $400,000 to $700,000 annually at build out. So it would be something that would be a revenue producing, obviously, something like this in the county. And I think that is a pretty conservative number annually at build out. The comprehensive plan, and I just make it very clear, depending on your perspective and what you want to pull out. I think tourism is an important facet to the comprehensive plan. We also talk a lot about the beauty, rural scenic character. My feeling is this particular site with its dense vegetation as it is now, it's probably hasn't been touched in 30 years. And you can see from the conditions, the applicant has offered a 100-foot buffer. We had talked about 60, but 100-foot buffer all around the property. I do think that is helpful, buffering the entrance. I have recommended approval of this. I do believe these conditions, and as you can see from the 8 pages of conditions, we have really tried to think of anything from emergency management to the site layout to prohibiting large-scale events, to come up with a set of conditions that would hopefully this would be a good neighbor. And I think one of the hard parts of my job and having done this for a long time, and I've talked to a lot of neighbors, and I know a lot of them and consider some to be friends. It's hard to, and I don't live in that area. Some of you here, maybe that live in the county, don't live in that area. So it's hard for me to say, hey, look, I really think this is a good project, and it build out. I think there are enough conditions there that will protect you as an adjacent landowner. I know when it's your home, it's easy for me to say that, and I understand that and respect that. But I do feel like from a planning perspective and looking at all the variables and things that I think we as staff and appointed officials should consider the economic development, the potential to bring jobs and development to the county in an industry that I believe is relatively low impact, that takes advantage of the scenic beauty, considering the buffering, the location of the site, the relatively easy access. I do believe this is probably about as good as it's going to get. Now, as far as for something like this. And I know several years ago we went through, a similar event venue. We're, on that particular one, we're still waiting for a site plan. So I don't know if that's forthcoming anytime, but I do believe that working with Mr. Helmy and his wife, they have a very good track record. They have a list of projects that they have done throughout the East Coast and country. And I believe that going forward, they will be good partners, and they have obviously during this process been good to work with, and suggestions that have been made for changes have always been open for that. So having said that, that's kind of all my comments on it. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer. But I guess, really, if this is something that will be, that is approved by Planning Commission and the board, we still have There's a lot of work that would need to be done before a site plan come, engineering, septic, water, there's a lot of hard engineering. I mean, this is really sort of the easy part, looking at the big picture, setting a site plan, a general layout. But the next step would really be, sort of the really getting in the dirt and figuring out, where things, as far as sewer, septic, stormwater management, and how that would work, some of what I call the hard engineering. So that could be expected next at some point. That's all I have.
Okay, anyone have any questions for Ligon?
So, Ligon, is there anything that we can do to try to direct traffic coming either north or southbound on 29 to come in right there at Winery Lane? Is there any kind of signage that we can put up right off of 29 to direct the traffic in that shortest direction?
Yeah, so I think if you're coming from the south, that's where you're going to be
That's
sent.
where you're gonna
But,
go, that's the way Google Maps,
Right.
or that's who's gonna take you that way.
and I did talk to a neighbor and said, when you come from the north, I guess it depends on what app you're using, it wants to take you to James City Road, then Kirtley Road. The only thing I can think of, I don't know if we can change the map algorithms, is that if any literature that is associated with the site, if this is approved, would recommend that be the preferred entrance to come right there, because, obviously, I think Prince Michelle, if I had to guess, you're probably, on a Saturday, you're probably easily looking at a couple hundred trips coming in and out. Now, they're only on a little portion there, and they have their sort of, access doesn't really bother Kirtley too much, but, I do believe maybe, again, maybe in their literature, I don't know if there's any way we can try to get the apps to change the way people come in, but,
We talked about their signage.
yeah, but, yeah,
We're only limited to 3 signs at 5 feet high, whatever you know.
Right.
But is there anything that we think that we could add out there that would help direct that?
Well, Mr. Snyder, to answer your question at least partially, and I'm not sure all of the regulations pertaining to this, but there are blue tourism signs that are available. There is a fee associated with those with the Virginia Department of Transportation, and you need to meet certain requirements as it relates to those signs. But this is the type of attraction where these signs are typically used. If you drive up Route 15, I think we've got Warcraft Brewery now, which it's kind of nice that they put that sign up, because I was wondering what that deck was for. But, my point is, there is a
There's an
program through the state where you can do that.
Any other questions directed to Ligon?
I guess, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Sean. If there's something in this application that we see that maybe some of the commissioners feel that would be a beneficial to the neighbors, we have a right to suggest that we would like to see that, correct?
That is correct. And remember the distinction between a conditional rezoning and a special use permit. With a special use permit, the board has far more power in terms of imposing conditions. Because remember, any special use permit is basically a variance from the existing zoning. And for that reason, the board can make the rules associated with that.
And I guess where I'm going with this, or what maybe I would like to add, I have a special place for the lady that lives there at that entrance. She's gonna know more about this than the rest of us is. And I guess maybe two of my concerns is, if the traffic is coming in and out of there, and there's a lot of traffic right there, if maybe we could tar and chip or pave the first section of that road till it passes her house, to where she wouldn't have all that dust from that gravel road all the time. And the other thing I would probably like to see, maybe if it could happen, is when the cars come out of there at night, or the cars going in there at night, it's on the turn area right there, if there was a privacy fence right there, the lights wouldn't hit our house every time something comes in and out. I just got a concern for the person that lives there.
Mr. Elliott, in that regard, since it's a VDOT road, we do not have the independent authority. We can work with VDOT, they'd probably work with you, and if it was one of the conditions of the special use permit, that would be included as part of it. In other words, the special use permit would require that to be tarred and chipped. But as we're going to find out I'm sorry?
I'm not speaking, sir.
The driveway.
I'm not speaking of Kirkley as I am the drive going into the facility.
Oh, the driveway itself? Yes,
Yes,
you
sir.
can do that.
Yes,
If it's a private entrance, yes, you can require that.
Any other question for Ligon? One quick question, Ligon. The emergency management plan, I mean, this is similar to what we saw in the previous application, but this says an on-site member who is CPR certified. Are there any other requirements, I mean, just for accident treatment or, something beyond just CPR certified? That seems, I mean, considering the location and the terrain there, I would say there's a good chance of sprains rather than heart attacks more than likely. I was just wondering about the emergency management plan. I know that there's been some discussion with the sheriff's department and emergency services and so forth, but did it go beyond the CPR requirement?
No, that was just what was recommended by some of the emergency management folks. But, I mean, we're all going to do a plan, emergency management plan.
Okay.
And there's really no reason why things like that won't be discussed. And I'm sure some of the staff will have first aid and those type of things, training. So, I mean, that's something that we could, again, that's kind of down the line if approved, but that's something that we could definitely discuss.
Yeah, I'm just
At
curious.
that
The
point.
emergency management plan is going to be required at some point anyway then, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Lee? All right, Mr. Helmy, would you like to address us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So this will not take long. I think we've been over the concept quite a few times on the previous project, and so it doesn't really differ much. Like Ligon said, it's just a larger site and therefore a larger program. But I just wanted to go through, the concept, what is really glamping, and where we are today in terms of the conditions, given that members of the community are here, more members than last time. So, Ligon, if you don't mind, the next slide, please. So, I mean, in all honesty, all the conditions that we have proffered in the special use permit don't really hurt the concept, or it's not truly a sacrifice, because it really just goes along with the glamping concept. So it's not that limiting noise at night is something that will go against what the guests want, because this is just more of a nature retreat. So if you guys see those two circles there is, I mean, the intersection between hospitality and nature is where glamping lies. So for the most part, these guests come to enjoy the scenic beauty of nature, and in that domain, they get serviced, and they get pampered. So it's not really your typical glamping experience, because they're not really roughing it. So I just wanted to share this, high-level concept of glamping, and I think it's very much aligned with the nature of this land and all the proffers that we have discussed in the past year. Next slide, please, Ligon. So, I mean, in terms of the program, there is a clubhouse. The clubhouse is pretty deep inside the property. And we have designed the site plan to mitigate or minimize impact on the surrounding communities. So when you have relatively higher, you know, density of guests and you have, you know, relatively more noise, it's in the clubhouse. And that is truly, I think, thousands of feet away from any neighbor. When we take a look at the site plan, similarly, the pergola, which is, again, very close to the clubhouse, is deep inside the property. Same for the pool. The accommodations are, you know, closer to a vacant land, and I think more than I'd say like 160, 70 feet from the property line, the closest one to the property line. In terms of back of house, I believe it's more than, and I'm talking about the structures, not the pond here. It's more than, I would say more than 1,000 feet from any structure in neighboring properties. In terms of the area characteristics, to Ligon's point, I mean, I can say it's almost on Route 29 where you have 16,000 vehicles a day. So it is relatively a commercial area. There are quite a few commercial establishments in the area, including Prince Michel. You have another hotel. You have the Pets Resort. There's also even some semi-industrial establishments, towing and auto center, a couple of or so. So, I mean, relatively speaking, it is a commercial area compared to more rural areas in Madison County. Next slide, please. In terms of how we, I mean, and again, this has been in the making for the last year, discussing how to mitigate the impact on the community. So I just listed them here. Maybe I'll add one or two that were discussed in the past workshop and in this workshop. I mean, first and foremost, we have 2.5 miles of property line. It's fairly large. And we have proffered 100 feet all around an undisturbed buffer. It's not only a buffer, it's undisturbed. So, and just the nature of the site, it is heavily dense with trees. So we'll keep them undisturbed. And these are, just to give you an order of magnitude, around 30 acres. So we are really letting go of 16% of this property to minimize visual impact, noise, and other disturbance. And it was, I think the setback is between 50 to 60 feet, so that we have added this additional buffer, and we will keep it undisturbed. In terms of noise, there are quiet times. I mean, they're pretty detailed in the conditions. There are no day events, so that's a proffer that we have added to the conditions. No amplified music. We have designated parking areas to minimize motor vehicle circulation inside the property. For the most part, we're using golf carts. These are relatively silent. Also, in terms of lighting, it's all downward dark skies lighting. And in terms of view shed, I don't believe there'll be really almost very minimal impact given the nature of the site, given the 100-foot buffer around the site. So the views will not be impacted. Can you go back, Ligon, please? Mm-hmm. And again, we did discuss the entrance, the traffic. So I think Ligon did mention the peak hours, morning, and the AM and the PM. So I won't go through that, but we did have discussions with VDOT, and they believe a commercial entrance is viable in this area. We have also, last time Mr. Elliott suggested having evergreens on both sides of the entrance to minimize impact of headlights. We did add that to the proffers. I am very much open to have tar and chip in the entrance to minimize any impact, like, you know, any air pollution. So I'm fine with that. There were some questions that relate to environmental questions, and again, I think DEQ and the health department are very, very thorough, and they will never give us any approved permits for the application or for the engineer designs if they see any hazard on the aquifer, on the water table, on the soil, And that would be a prerequisite to get the final approvals to build this project. In conclusion, I mean, Madison County was one of the first we considered in Virginia for this kind of establishment. I think I met Ligon 3 years ago. We've been looking at properties, hundreds of properties. Last year, I think, was a true building block and a stepping stone. We learned a lot about the needs of this county, and we came back with this property. I think it checks all the boxes, and I hope this will be approved, and it will be a true tourism, I think, addition to this county. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Helmy? All right, thank you, sir. All right, again, for public comment, and again, I'd remind you, please, to, as a courtesy, try to remain within 3 minutes, and we will try to put a timer back on the screen. Identify yourself and give us your comments. Any public comment?
My name is Larry Thomas. Can you hear me?
But you did this.
How do you do this?
Hey, but shit.
I don't have that much to say. I have 2 Airbnb units, and we thought about trying to do glamping, and basically, this is a question for the applicant. The reason we didn't do glamping was because we didn't want liabilities involving snake bites and spider bites and things like that. Mr. Carpenter mentioned having more medical resources, and I would recommend resources with regard to snakes, spiders, raccoons. They would probably love that place. I'm just wondering how the applicant would deal with things like that, because that's why I never went into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Is that microphone on?
I think it is.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't know if you give 3 minutes for every 2 people or what, but anyway, my name is Kathy Mills, and we are speaking on behalf of the friends, families, and property owners residing on Kirtley Road who adjoin the proposed glamping and event venue. These are the thoughts and concerns of Karen Newton, Jesse and Teresa O'Donnell, Kathy and E.J. Mills, Justin Newton, and Ray and Janice Seekley. Of course, I've told you my name is Kathy, and I live at 265 Kirtley Road. My family has been living in Virginia for over 13 decades. We are taxpayers, invested, law-abiding, and responsible property owners in Madison County. We stay here because Madison County has always been a community that embraces the values, family, and respect for one another. I've been working for the Madison County Public School System for 28 years. I'm the secretary and registrar at our elementary school. I mention this because I meet new families weekly. This has definitely been an increase over the years and is a cost to our taxpayers. In this capacity, I'm concerned about the seasonal staffing at the proposed glamping grounds event venue of Kirtley Road. We are concerned about whether or not the employee housing will include their families, and will they need to be enrolled in our school system. In addition, since seasonable staff will be provided, what is the benefit of jobs and employment for the people of Madison County? Regarding the location of the proposed venue, we are concerned about the constant traffic in and out of venue traveling down Kirtley Road onto Route 29. Kirtley Road was established by Virginia's first Road Act of 1632. It is the last remaining unpaved portion of this colonial route still owned and maintained by VDOT. The road is not equipped to handle the amount of traffic this will produce based on GPS bringing traffic in from the north down Kirtley Road to the venue. When traveling north leaving the venue, the GPS takes you down Kirtley Road as well. The road cannot withstand the heavy car and construction vehicle traffic this will produce. The entrance to the venue is right alongside resident Karen Newton's property. A 100-foot buffer does not allow for a 2-lane road, and the proposed evergreen shrubs will not prevent noise and headlights from incoming and outgoing traffic. In view of Mr. Helmy's last attempt and denial for a permit, a member of the Planning Commission questioned whether they could vote on the proposal at all, citing a portion of the county code states that new development must fit the growth pattern of the area. The property off Kirtley Road, although a larger parcel, will not be fully developed. Therefore, this poses the same concern as the prior proposals, density being the issue. With regards to the 120 glamping sites, we are concerned about each of these sites having their own camp fire ring. Who will be responsible to be sure these fires are put out safely and not a threat to the adjoining properties? In addition, who will be responsible for the monitoring of quiet hours, especially for the consideration of the nearby Kirtley Road families, as there is no noise ordinance in place for Madison County. Furthermore, there is no leash law for Madison County. If guests are allowed to bring pets and they are not leashed, this may cause danger to neighbors, livestock, and even young children in the area. We were advised that construction to build this venue could take several years and would be taken in place up to 6 days a week. The noise, incoming construction vehicles, and length of time to complete the operation is concerning. No buffer along the property line can prevent the noise of the construction vehicles. We appreciate Mr. Elliott's views in the Daily Progress article regarding Mr. Helmy's last application, referencing that due to the location, guests of the proposed venue may travel to Culpeper or Orange rather than bring in business to Madison. This proposal is even closer to the Culpeper than the last one. Please note all surrounding property owners were to be informed of the proposed event venue and given information regarding the same. This was not done. I got 3 more sentences. The county has already turned down the proposal for Madison for the same reasons that we have, and we hope you vote no for this location as well. Please do not put this type of venue in our backyards. In conclusion, do not invade the properties in the surrounding area. We have been dedicated to the county for decades. We believe this location is not appropriate and ask that you acknowledge our concerns regarding the development of this proposed venue. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
May I
And
respectfully submit this letter to you?
Yes,
For the
sure.
board.
And I suppose if you were speaking for this whole group, then you certainly fell well within your 3 minutes. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Other public comment?
Yes. My name is Teresa, and I live at 163 Kirtley Road. And I just wanted to address the subject of the density of the proposed development. When the Planning Commission denied the special use permit for Mr. Helmy at the Ford Shop Road location, one of their concerns was the density of his proposal. The prior proposal was to allow 70 glamping sites within the 59 acres, along with the other structures. And some of the members of the Planning Commission, as well as the Board of Supervisors, felt this was too dense for the allotment of land. This current proposal is for 120 sites and about 100 acres of land that they plan to develop. The land is approximately 189 acres, but he just stated they're going to take 30 acres away probably for the greenery around the outside. And then they're only going to develop half of the site. So really the density is approximately the same ratio if you calculate the numbers based on the structures, if you're going to put that many units in the land that he's going to develop. And I just had one more comment. In addition, Madison County already has several other options for camping and lodging. We have the newly remodeled Madison Vines RV and cottages. Graves Mountain has their lodges, cabins, and a campground. They have the Rose River cabins. I believe the Cressier Farm is the one you indicated earlier. They're coming up with a site plan for agri-resort glamping. And then we have many other Airbnbs in the county. So I just wonder how many camping and cabin sites we really need. So I vote no to this permit. I don't want the traffic, the noise, and potentially 380 people in my backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Other public comment? Yes, sir.
My name's Charlie Sheets, I live on James City Road. I'm about a couple, 300 yards away from this piece of property, but I've got some really good neighbors that touch it, directly. I think one of the first things I'm gonna have a problem with is, so the people that are gonna be attracted to this place are not from around here. They're from Northern Virginia. And if you've ever seen Northern Virginians on their bicycles or on their Teslas, they own whatever property they're on. And they'll be crossing over, they'll be crossing Eric's fence, be over there in his fields, looking around and hiking. They'll be back behind Jinx's house and whatnot. You're not gonna be able to keep them contained. They're worse than cattle. Restaurants, we ain't got places in Madison County to feed all these people. And they're not gonna come here anyway. They're gonna go 15 minutes north of Culpeper and hit Davis Street. All of the shopping and all of the restaurants on Davis Street, that's where they're going. Like I said, these aren't people that are like us here in Madison. They're from up in Northern Virginia. They think differently, they act differently. You mentioned about the signage thing. These people have Teslas. They don't look at signs. They've got an iPad on their dashboard, and that tells them where to go. And it's gonna bring them right in on, James, turn right there on Kirtley, and then you'll have to make the immediate left. That's just what it's gonna do. Next, jobs. It's not gonna bring any Madison County people jobs. It's gonna bring some outsiders jobs in here. Buffer, not gonna have I think Kathy mentioned it. There's no way to have a 100-foot buffer on each side of a 30-foot right-of-way unless you own both those pieces of property. Lastly, I'll put it out there. If there's 10 property owners next door, I'll go into a binding agreement and buy the piece of property, and we'll just all own it together and keep it as a farm, put some cattle on it, whatever we gotta do.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name's Casey Jenkins, and my family, we own a property on James City. It's 1573 James City. Our property tax map parcel 33-3G is directly impacted from the location of the proposed glamping site. We truly believe that this proposed project will greatly negatively impact the area's safety, success, and peaceful enjoyment of not only our property, but the surrounding properties. Our opposition to this request comes from several different concerns. We feel that it's not within the scope of the agriculture community. This application is to develop an agriculture land for commercial use. This request is to build a large commercial project with no public utilities or infrastructure in place. We're concerned on the impact of providing septic for 400+ individuals with housing and accessory dwelling needs. What will be the impact on the water table to provide sufficient water source to the project? Will it diminish the neighboring property's water source? What's the recourse of the neighbors' property owners if they see a significant drop in their own personal well output? The proposed location for a glamping event is not near any state park or attraction. And typically, if you think about camping, you're camping to hike, fish, ATV riding. So aside from the 2 pools and the spa, or the pool and 2 hot tubs and a spa, what are the activities that are drawing the guests to the locations? Will they be allowed to bring their ATVs and ride ATVs? Who is then going to keep the 384 strangers from hiking or riding their ATVs or trespassing onto the neighboring properties, damaging the fencing, the crops, the safety of the livestock, general litter, and debris? Who's going to police this? It appears that the burden is going to fall on the neighbors to protect their own property and livelihood from the greater than 384 strangers on any given day or week. We now have fire pits that are at 120 different locations. And given the limited level of experience of burning fire in the country, in a glamping type of scenario, how are we gonna protect from a forest fire not breaking out? And then we've got one ingress and one egress on how, there's a threat to the guests that are there, there's a threat to the adjoining properties. Again, the quiet hours, who's policing that? I know that there are event venues in Culpeper County alone that's had issues with noise violations, and the burden, and it's a special use permit, it's a constant draw on their county because they're violating the special use permit. Because again, the burden falls back on the neighbors to bring it up that they're not abiding by the noise permit. We've been told by the county, and we hear it tonight, that the applicant's gonna be a good neighbor. My concern is not the applicant itself, themselves being a good neighbor, it's the greater than 400 people that are gonna be coming and going to the property on a daily basis. How are they gonna treat the land? They've got zero financial or personal investment in the property in the area. And I think there's a great concern there for the safety and the security of our neighbors and the community and the livelihoods. Again, we respectfully oppose the proposed special use permit, and we request that it be denied.
Thank you. Public comment, yes.
My name is Terry Fay. Before purchasing my property to build my home, I purposely made sure there were no commercial properties near that would show up in the future. I specifically wanted a quiet piece of property that would be my forever home. I found that property, and I built my forever home. A couple months ago, we were here again to discuss the property at the beginning of Kirtley Road. The property was a beautiful piece of historic property. In 1863, it was the Battle of James City. There were obvious fatalities and numerous soldiers that were buried on that property. It was zoned residential. It was purchased as residential, then petitioned to the board to change to commercial for the purpose of a sole salvage lot. Sadly, you granted that request. We live in a beautiful community of mostly residential homes. We all have jobs. We have worked on our property to ensure our forever homes are taken care of. Nothing is more enjoyable than coming home from a long day of work and enjoying our mountains and our peaceful evening with our families. If this event venue is successful, there will be 120 campsites. With campsites, you have campfires, as obviously noted. If every night there are 120 campfires, we will not be able to even open our doors and windows due to the smell. Least of our concerns, actually. The long-term risk of exposure, according to the EPA, March 30th, 2023. Wood smoke can irritate your lungs, cause inflammation, affect your immune system, and make you more prone to lung infections, likely including SARS and COVID-19. TheFamiliesForCleanAir.org. Wood smoke contains many of the same toxic and carcinogenic substances as cigarette smoke, including benzene, benzo, pyrene, and benzo. These chemicals are basically petroleum, which causes lung infections. Wood smoke produces far more particulate pollution than cigarette smoke does. National Park travelers. Smoke may smell good, however. Particles can make asthma symptoms worse, trigger asthma attacks, also trigger heart attacks, stroke, irregular rhythms, and heart failure. The benzene smoke can irritate the lungs and make them more susceptible to infections, including the one that also again forms COVID-19, which has shut our country down for 2 years and is still causing problems. Lung.org. Campfires will cause emphysema, chronic bronchitis, hardening of the arteries, nasal, throat, lung, blood, and lymph system cancers. Fire Gear Outdoors, COPD. Virginia.gov, respiratory illness, autoimmune disorders, and rare cancers. Cleveland Clinic, lung disease, lung cancer, wheezing, and premature death. Smithsonian Magazine, bonfires also tend to produce more carbon monoxide. National Institutes of Health, fire emissions are a more important contributor to global mortality. It is my understanding that the Planning Committee is also to consider the health and welfare of the community and the Board of Supervisors to make the decisions that meet the county needs. This is not a need. What if it fails? Yet another area in our community is ruined. If it fails, abandoned buildings, destructed property, will it become a homeless village? You talked about the scenic nature for your guests. You're willing to take our scenic nature away? And I ask you, Mr. Webb, you love this idea, you think it's a great idea. How much would you love it if it were in your backyard? We are basically begging you to please do not accept this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Hello, I'm Gary Fay from 443 Curtley as well, and that happens to be my wife. So we move in there, and to start it all off, we were here last year because they put a used salvage lot 2 lots down from our house on the corner of James City and Curtley. Okay, makes a lot of sense, which I don't understand how that's still there. And if you can see, the roof is half off the house now. I'll have pictures and I'll send them to you. But it's not very sightly anymore. I guess the other thing is that when they do the construction that they're gonna do, they're coming on Curtley. And those heavy trucks and everything are gonna just wipe that street out. There's no question about it. The other thing that I wonder is that they're saying that possibly 385 people could be there overnight. Okay, well, is that 385 people plus the people that come to go to the restaurant? There's 125 parking spots. Somebody do the math. So you have, and also, is it only, the usage of that facility is only for the people that are camping there? Because then you have 385. But if you have an event, where are you gonna park everybody? Lastly, sorry, and if the restaurant, is the restaurant only gonna be used for the people that are staying at the camp? Because if that's not, then 385 plus another 200, but an outdoor pavilion, what's that for? The 3,000 square foot outdoor pavilion, they're gonna have no music playing there? It just, I mean, 125 parking spots? The other thing is that where they're gonna have the employees living is up against the people that are residentials right there. Can't we throw it on the other side? 6,000 square foot building for housing. I mean, I'm okay if you do this, and if it fails, the community puts it back to the way it was. The people that make the decision here probably won't be here when there is a problem. I'm not saying that, somebody else is gonna have to take it on. What are we gonna do? If you can, come see the salvage lot next to my house. I think you might have a different opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other public comment?
Marshall Jenkins, I own 1573 James City Road, my wife and my son. I guess what bothers me is I called around, well, my wife called around to hotels in Culpeper. The old Holiday Inn, which is Best Western now, has got 155 rooms. So you do the math. You got the cabins, you got the bedrooms for the housing, and the tenant, the manager house and all that comes to 158. It has a pool, the Best Western does. It has a restaurant and a bar. It's the same thing they're trying to do in agricultural land, is put a hotel. It's a small way around being a commercial site. Glamping is glamping, I guess. I didn't hear about it till recently, but it is what it is. My other problem I have is that tonight I learned from the first case about buffering. Now, I thought buffering was a tree vegetation. I just didn't know you could not disturb the 100-foot land. So if there's no trees that border my vacant land, as Mr. Helm called it, which is Agriculture 1 farmland, then his guests can walk over to my land. I mean, I have to police that now to keep them off my fence, keep them off touching my cows, leaving gates open. We bought an agriculture piece of land, and that's what we're doing. We're agriculture. We have cows on it now. We have fencing on it now. My son rents the Hit Kirby farm next door to it, has crops on that land. So we are agriculture, and we bought a piece of land being agriculture. And now it's gonna be a motel, basically. And I hope y'all say no, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Hello, I'm Mike Wills, I live on 999 James City Road. I'd like to sit up here and say something different than you haven't already heard, but I'm going to echo everything that they said. This affects us. A lot of things are water usage. You've got 120 glamping sites, you got a restaurant, you got a pool, you got a bar, no public water, you're gonna drill wells, you're gonna take it from the cattle, from the people's aquifer. Height of buildings, that wasn't talked about. What's the height of the buildings there that you're gonna build? Light pollution, you say you're gonna have lights that face down, so there's no lights inside the building. You're gonna see those. I live on the back side. I'm gonna be looking at fire pits and lights scattered through the mountainside. I moved to the country, worked my butt off for the house that I have, worked the land. There's gonna be people screaming and yelling till 10 o'clock tonight. Move for quiet. Windless nights, we're gonna hear everything. I echo the pet thing too. I've got 4 dogs that walk the property every day. With that many people, they're going to trespass. They're gonna walk up to the edge. They're gonna walk up to the edge of our property because we have a great view to take photos across our property and our pond. And density, that was talked about, 120 glamping sites. It's not on 198 or 190 acres. It's on less than 100 acres. Those are my comments, and I hope you guys vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this? Any other public comment? Thank you. All right, any further discussion from the planning commission members?
I'd like to make note that item number 5, paragraph A, the last sentence, we may need to change. Each tent or cabin may have its individual bathroom facility. And do we need to change that to each tent or cabin will have its individual exchange made or will? I'm throwing that out there because I saw it.
Yeah, we, that was changed, you know, again, depending on the septic studies, there could be potential of a shared bathrooms, is that sort of the thought? We had discussed this last week, so, I mean, there are, yeah, I mean, we've changed that to may. The VDH is going to have specific requirement on campgrounds and bathrooms. There could be a possibility, depending on the septic needs, that there might not be as many. Ahmed, do you kind of want to?
Yes, sure, thank you.
Yeah, so regarding the bathrooms, bathrooms are equal to water consumption and accordingly also wastewater. So, I mean, our original program is to have a bathroom for each cabin or tent. Yet if the Department of Health comes and says you're impacting the aquifer, then we will have to reduce the number of bathrooms for the cabins. So, I mean, I'm okay with will if that satisfies the Planning Commission. But again, I was right to Ligon's point. At the end of the day, it's really the Department of Health's decision after we do the step tests and the soil tests, step tests for the wells and the soil tests for the septic.
So what would you have, a shared bathroom between them, or?
I mean, we'll have a bathhouse, but yeah. Yeah,
All right.
and there is a standard for campground, I mean, for these kind of campgrounds.
It's sort of like on
Yeah.
the villa, Shenandoah Vines sort of has a shared, so, I mean, it just leaves a little flexibility to, as Ahmed said, so I think that was the reason.
All right, in your conditions 8 and 9, that's already addressed, and it's addressed to say that if for whatever reason either septic or water requirements can't be met, the usage shall be reduced in number or size or eliminated altogether.
Correct.
So are you changing that?
So the usage would be, I think that paragraph, Mr. Chairman, that you mentioned, refers to the number of cabins or tents.
Mhm.
But one scenario is, what if we want to keep the same density, we will have to reduce the bathrooms. So, but, I mean, if, we can bring it back to what it was, and if, I mean, I'm okay with whatever the health department's going to decide. I mean, it's not even a choice. So, we can bring it back to Will or Shell, and then leave it to the experts in the agency to decide what's doable and what's not.
Yeah, rather than make that significant a change at this point, I think that would be the best,
Okay.
best path.
So did you,
So are we gonna do that? We're gonna change that to,
Well, it's addressed in condition 8 and condition 9.
right?
Mr. Chairman, it may be appropriate to ask Mr. Helmy if he has any comment addressing Mr. Elliott's concern about the hard surface for a portion of the entrance.
Okay, I think you said that would be fine with you. but
That is
just-
fine.
Just respond to
Yeah,
that.
we can
please.
have asphalt with torn chip.
So
Anything
that
to
should be,
minimize the- yeah, absolutely.
so that should be added to the conditions that are set forth in the special use permit.
Okay, I think, Pete, did you say something about some kind of, like a section of privacy fence for headlights and stuff? Well, yeah, we just discussed that, yeah.
I believe there's one condition that mentions evergreen shrubs to
Mhm.
minimize
Yeah.
the impact of headlights. If you believe that is sufficient, then I guess the problem would be hopefully mitigated by these evergreens.
I guess my concern, Mr. Chairman, is if this is an additional condition that's being added to the special use permit, we need to formulate some language as to what that will say. I defer to Mr. Elliott as to the language he has in mind for that. But
Right.
any motion that may come to pass on this should include that
Should
additional
include
language.
that, yeah. Probably as an additional.
As an additional condition.
Yeah. All right. Do we already have a condition dealing with the site entrance? Yes.
Yes.
yeah, we did put that buffer on the entrance. I'm just trying to,
Well, you,
Site entrance number 10.
yes. Would that be an appropriate place to just add a sentence to say something about?
yeah, the entrance, the length of the entrance on, that's parcel 33-8E, I believe, shall be paved and shown on the site plan, something to that extent, the entrance shall be paved.
I think that'd be fine with tar and chip there.
Paved / tar and chipped, right?
I think the better language would be hard surface.
Yeah.
That gives you more flexibility in terms of what it means. Paving is a term of art, as Mr. Elliott
Okay.
knows, but we need to make sure that we're not requiring, 3 or 4 feet of asphalt with all of the other conditions of paving.
A runway, yeah.
Yeah, we can add a sentence at the end of that.
Is that agreeable, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And if that's the case, whomever makes the motion, if the motion is made to approve this, and I don't know, but if it is, you would need to amend paragraph 10 to include that language. I'm just trying to keep the record straight.
Is that gonna be with an addition to a privacy fence?
I think that the evergreens that he's planning to do there, we should take care of that also.
Yeah, at the site plan level, I think we can specify heights and stuff like that. Okay, what we used was the water supply? No, okay.
Yeah, it's just-
Or you said the
Well,
will.
that's, yeah, I'm just making notes.
Oh, okay. All right, any other comment or discussion from the planning commission? All right, can we have anyone make a motion here? We need somebody to make a motion. Sean's gonna fuss at us again.
I will allow Mr. Wright to fuss at you.
Okay,
I've
thank you.
Done enough of that tonight.
Let me ask you a question, John.
Mhm.
Does the planning commission have the powers or the right to just pass this on to the board of supervisors to let them do the decision?
Theoretically, yes, but then the question becomes when the Board of Supervisors can vote on it.
Yeah.
And so
We
for
did it
that
last time,
reason,
right?
you are much better off making a recommendation. And
approved it
remember,
last
the
time.
Planning Commission is charged with making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna err with the side of the county planner for approval and make a motion that case number SU-05-27-07 be recommended for approval to the Board of Supervisors, added to condition number 10 for a hard surface entrance.
Okay.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. I suspect we should vote by raising hands. All in favor, raise your hand.
And the votes in favor are Mr. Elliott, Ms.
Ms.
Utz,
Jenkins.
Mr. Cowan, Mr. Carpenter, Mr. Snyder, and I believe, was that it? Or Mr. Graves, are you
No.
voting against? Okay.
All right. All opposed? Okay. All right. By 5-1, we are voting to recommend approval with the additional wording about the hard surface entrance in section number 10. For case number SU 05-23-07. Thank you, sir. All right, do we have any other items for the Planning Commission or from the public? All right, if not, can I have a motion for adjournment for the Planning Commission? Moved and seconded, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
All right. I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors portion of the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. Does anybody have anything we need to add to the agenda this evening?
Sir, Mr. Chairman, just please note that on your agenda, we didn't represent the table language, but as the planning commission has pointed out, the solar case has been tabled until your joint meeting in June.
Yes, sir. Anybody else have anything? What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're gonna do public comment 4 times during our session. We didn't normally do just general public comment on anything, at the beginning and the end of the meeting. Does anybody have any general public comment? Anything? All right, let's go to the hearings, and I would like to start. It's exceedingly rare to get cases denied. Do we still act upon these, Mr. Gregg?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
the way it works is, nothing was denied, you simply have a recommendation that it be
To deny.
denied.
Exactly.
The Board of Supervisors takes it up brand new.
Absolutely.
The Board of Supervisors can follow the recommendation, or they can ignore the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Case number SU-05-23-05, Mr. Thomas Warman has applied for a special use permit to construct and operate mini storage units on a roughly 2-acre portion of a 2.5-acre B1 business zone parcel. In the B1 zoning district, mini storage units are allowable by special use permit. The total number of mini storage units would not exceed 200 individual storage units and consist of up to 8 storage buildings or structures. If approved, the applicant would be required to submit an official site plan to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and approved by the Board of Supervisors. The subject parcel is improved by an existing commercial building which is currently utilized for retail and office use. The commercial building contains roughly 2,800 square feet in floor area and has a postal address of 1235 North Seminole Trail, Madison, Virginia. The parcel is also identified on Madison County Tax Map as 40-104E. Mr. Webb, anything to add?
Yeah, I would appreciate the Planning Commission diligence and recognize that they see some, I guess, some issues for denial, but I really see that even the septic, the buffering, if the board's inclined to say 10 foot has to be vegetative buffer, I really think most of the concerns are relatively small site plan specific issues that can be worked out by the applicant engineer before they bring in a site plan. It would give the applicant time to work with the joint property owner, maybe a shared entrance, which hopefully they made some progress. If not, you just follow the recommendation for the entrance and get an access management exception. But I really, from a highest and best use of this property, the impacts of storage units, from traffic-wise, it being buffered, I really see this as a very passive use that has a very low traffic impact, and the two technical issues or the concerns, I think, can easily be addressed at a site plan. So,
Questions from the board to Mr. Webb? Anybody? All right, to the applicant. Have anything to add, Mr. Connell?
Yes, I'd just like to say to Mr. Webb's comments, self-storage facilities are minimal impact to the community in terms of utilities impact, municipal requirements, police, fire, things like that. We generate tax revenue, but there's little impact of the tax burden of the county itself. So I'd just like to add that the use of this land for self-storage is very low impact to the community.
Questions for the applicant? To the public. To the public. Mr. Hauser?
Yes, sir, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, and generally, I couldn't care less what you do with your property, but in this particular case, if you look at that property line, it is very narrow. It is very narrow in the back. If you walk down to it, and you talk about putting the holding pond in with that downhill grade, it's going to run directly into the back of my property, into the creek that feeds into the Robinson River. I don't know how you could ever do that, but that, engineers, I'm sure, could figure that out. But the comment about the buffering, and there's no definite, I've heard three different decisions, or descriptions now, of what buffering equals, what vegetation equals, and what it doesn't equal. If you take those trees down, what little bits there left, as steep as that is into the creek, there's going to be a problem. And so folks who think that's a minimal impact, put it in your backyard. So I think that I would hope that the board would at least concur with the planning commission and their decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. Other public comment? Other public comment? All right, back to the board. What is on the 10-foot, on the buffer around it, is that something that you're willing to go down, Mr. Connell?
Yes, sir. I would speak with Mr. Woolman about that, but I'm sure he would be willing to do that.
There you go. And that would be.
Minimum 10 feet.
Minimal of 10 feet. We've checked, Mr. Weekly, what'd you find about the holding pond in the setback area of 60 feet off, is it 50 feet, excuse me, off the rear property line?
So I reviewed our ordinance. It doesn't have specifically that a structure such as a stormwater holding pond. I know that words matter in there. 50 feet is clearly the setback for the rear. The question is the buffer. So that is something I would suggest you have that dialogue with the applicant. Having a storm structure there is encroaching, in my opinion, in that 50 feet setback. Certainly, stormwater is controlled in different ways, most of which you see ponds. You see those driving by the Madison Plaza and so forth, other ways. There's underground that they can do, but it is required to have a licensed professional engineer from the Commonwealth of Virginia to design that. That would also ultimately have to be approved by Department of Environmental Quality. But certainly, our ordinance seems to not be as defined as, a building, certainly you couldn't have it there. But stormwater management is not really specific.
Mr. Gregg?
Mr. Chairman, remember that the Board of Supervisors has other rights as well. If this is uncertain and require a little more definitive answer, the Board of Supervisors on its own motion can table this matter for the next meeting of the Board of Supervisors.
Anybody else have questions, comments for any of the applicant, lawyers, whoever? Yeah, general comments. Go at it.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I have to agree that this proposal needs to be remanded back to the Planning Commission. There's too many loose ends and potential problems that are not resolved at this point. And I would move to remand this back to the Planning Commission for the completion of the necessary details and for this to be brought back when it's actually ready for consideration.
There's a motion on the floor. Yeah, we did. Yes, we did. Oh, thank you. there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion?
Yeah, I've got
Please.
some discussion. You know, I've looked at this, the questions that I hear, there's a difference between a vegetative buffer and a setback. A setback is a setback. What we're talking about vegetative buffer is what we want to plant within that setback that will buffer the outside screen, yeah, to be screening. So we could have called it vegetative screening instead of buffer if that was too confusing. And so most of the items that I've heard that need to be addressed tonight, I don't think that the ingress and egress is an issue. I think that the parking requirements and the drain field together, you know, when you look at the conceptual site plan, if in fact the drain field is behind that building and takes up most of what's cleared back there, and the parking requirements that'll come along with it, those two things will dictate ultimately how many number of buildings he's going to be able to put in there and the number of units that are going to go in there. And otherwise, the site plan will answer many of the other questions. So, you know, I just based on that, I don't really have a problem with it at this point.
All right. Other comments? The one I'd like to point out is the VDOT topic. Proposing to go through Mr. McHaney's property seems ridiculous. There's two entrances already on the front of this piece of property. Being a special use permit, we have to ask VDOT for their recommendations. We don't have to follow it. At one time, certainly, they did approve the two entrances that are currently there, separated by an island, for a convenience store that thankfully Jonathan brought back to us as Mr. B's. It seems like this is a low-impact deal. I don't see why the access is such a big component of this. Also, I agree with Mr. Yao over here. A lot of this stuff is on the site plan. And going at it as a condition of the 10-foot buffer and screening around the property, and then having to deal with the regulatory side of DEQ, and you're going to disturb more than an acre of soil, so it certainly goes in front of DEQ. They are a thorough and miserable group of people to deal with, and any kind of going to your comment, Mr. Hauser, about going into the creeks and then into the Robinson River, they take that very, very, very seriously, and they certainly are not going to allow runoff and any kind of degradation to those public waters. That's kind of where I stand on this thing.
Well, I'm comfortable that DEQ and VDOT and the Health Department will take care of all the questions that we have. This is a good business. This is a business that's clean, doesn't require public water, doesn't require public sewer. Noise level is nil, pretty much, so I don't see the reason why we can't move forward with it.
Any other comments? We do have a motion on the floor to table, or not to table, but to send back this case to the Planning Commission, to come back in front of us when it's complete. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, remember, there's no second to this motion.
There is a second.
There's a second.
Mr. Dawson seconded it.
looking
Yeah,
something,
no,
sorry.
I appreciate everybody keeping me straight. We do have a motion and a second to send it back to the Planning Commission. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that one's dead.
And that was a 3-2 vote with
3-2.
Mr. Yao, Mr. Jackson, and Ms. Hoffman
Yes, ma'am.
voting against it, okay.
All right, what would y'all like to do?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case number SU-05-23-05, adding to it under number 4 condition that it would contain a vegetative buffer, a minimum 10-foot vegetative buffer. Got that? A minimum 10-foot vegetative buffer.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
There it is. All right, thank you. Case number SU-05-23-07. Mr. Ahmed Helmi has applied for a special use permit to operate an event venue on an A1 agricultural zone parcel. In the A1 zoning district, an event venue use is allowable by special use permit and is required to adhere to Articles 14-18 through 14.18.4 of the zoning ordinance. The applicant is seeking a special use permit to allow the entire 189.8 acre parcel to be utilized for the following uses: up to 120 individual short-term lodging units. Lodging units would be cabins and/or tent-style units, and no cabin tent would exceed 700 square feet of interior floor area. A spa tent structure not to exceed 600 square feet of interior floor area, a lodge building containing a reception area and restaurant bar. The lodge building would not exceed 7,000 square feet of interior floor area, a maintenance housekeeping building not to exceed 3,500 square feet of interior floor area, an employee housing building not to exceed 6,500 square feet of interior floor area, a storage shed not to exceed 1,200 square feet of interior space floor area, and a pavilion not to exceed 3,500 square feet of interior floor area space. The applicant has proffered a conceptual site layout design, and the special use permit conditions eliminate large-scale outdoor events as an allowable use. The 189.8 acres parcel does not have a postal address, but is located on James City Road Route 612, roughly 0.6 miles from the intersection of James City Road and North Seminole Trail Route US 29, and is identified on a Madison County tax map as 33-9E. This request also includes a second adjoining undeveloped parcel containing roughly 0.47 acres, identified on Madison County's tax map as 33-8A. This parcel would be utilized as a principal means of ingress and egress to the site via Kirtley Road, Route 631. Mr. Webb?
I don't really have much more to add. I do know the site plan, we have 165 parking spaces, and I did not calculate in the parking that's being shown for the employee housing. So just a point of clarification. Again, I don't really have much more to add other than this will again require a site plan that will come back, that will have a lot of the kind of the hard engineering, the technical issues will have to be explored. And as one of the conditions says, if can't meet all the conditions of the VDH and engineering and DEQ, then the request would need to be reduced. So other than that, the Plan Commission obviously did, to condition number 10, add that the entrance shall be hard surface, which I would recommend that also be in any motion if the board is inclined to approve.
All right, questions from Mr. Webb? To the applicant. Mr. Helmy, anything to add?
Just one comment.
If you would, please.
So, in the conditions, the size of the lodge is 11,900 square feet, but I guess in the introduction, it's 7,000. 7,000 was the original with the 7 units. It is 11,900. I just wanted to clarify that because there are two figures.
What number is that?
That would be.
Substantially change.
I don't think so.
Just work off,
25.5.
just,
Mr. Chairman, now,
yeah, please.
Mr. Helmy, can you clarify, was this
Oh.
the employee lodging, or which structure are you referring to?
That is the clubhouse, the lodge.
Just work off the advertisement. The advertisement, it says the lodge building would not exceed 7,000 square feet of interior floor area. He's clarifying it to 11,900.
That's why I was asking, because in the description that
please.
It's
Mr. Webb
11.9.
has, paragraph C,
Yeah.
it has 11,100.
Correct.
And I just want to know which structure you were referring to.
Yeah, it is the lodge.
Sean Gregg, does that,
That is a substantial variance from the application, from the advertisement, rather. Based on that, I'm not I think that any vote, you're certainly welcome to vote, but you are possibly subject to challenge based on that variance.
I would keep whatever was in the advertisement.
So just to further articulate that, that means that the value of, was it 7,000 square feet for the lodge in the advertisement?
yes.
Then that would be what the board is voting on. And I would remind the board, however you vote, articulate the bases for your vote, just to make sure the record is as clear as possible.
Mr. Helmy, you understand what he's saying, is that the advertisement at 7,000 square feet is what we are voting on.
Yes, sir.
So the 11,900, you wouldn't be able to build to that level.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right.
So it's with the change.
All right, anybody have questions for Mr. Helmy? All right, to the public, to the public.
Charlie Sheeds again. I didn't do that good in school, but y'all were talking about bathrooms earlier. And if there had to reduce the number of bathrooms, that'd be fine. Well, if you got 100 people using 100 bathrooms, and they go one time a day, that's 100 flushes, right? Well, if you may go to 50 bathrooms, you still got 100 people that've got to use that bathroom. Now those 50 bathrooms being flushed twice, the same amount of water is going down the toilet. The same amount of water is being used. Had one other thing slip my mind. Mr. Webb, I don't mean any disrespect to you, but the lack of information that you've had for the storage facility, I didn't even come here for the storage facility, but for that and what's going on, I'm not really sure. I've put it in record. I'd just like to have your resignation. I'm not sure you're right for this county.
Like to have yours too.
No,
Well, as a citizen and taxpayer
no,
of
we're
this
not
county,
doing that.
and plus it's my time behind the microphone. Thank you very much.
Nope, no personal attacks, that's the only one. Thank you for your comment. Other public comments? Please, yes, sir. We'll come to you next, Mr. Jenkins.
I didn't say anything last
Yes,
time.
sir, go ahead.
But I live on Kirtley as well, and we were talking about,
What's your
the
name, sir?
employee-
Your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, my name's Mike.
Yes.
We're at Willow Hill.
Mike.
Mike Howard, we're at Willow Hill. You guys had said that there are gonna be, employees there as well. And I'm curious if
Howard.
those employees are there and they're living there and their families are living there, and they only work, say, an 8-hour shift or so, or are they gonna be doing all the rest of the time? They're gonna be going to town, they're gonna be doing this, that, going to the movie theater, going bowling, so they're gonna be driving in and out, in and out, in and out. I think that the number of vehicles going in and out of there, I think that y'all have that number really low. And that's really all I gotta say. I just, there's gonna be a lot of traffic. We walk dogs on that road. My daughter plays on that road, walks up and down, and I'm really worried about the amount of traffic that's gonna be going up and down that road, regardless of where the entrance is. If you're coming from, Charlottesville area, or if you're coming from Northern Virginia, you're gonna be coming down Kirtley Road one way or the other. So, that's all I gotta say.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins, please.
Marshall Jenkins, 1573 James City Road. I guess what concerns me is, a lot of Kirkley Trail citizens are here, and nobody's really in favor of this, except for a couple people here from Maryland. And the planning commission voted on it, approved it. But you have one egress and one ingress. Now, fire breaks out back in the back there. You get fire trucks in, ambulances, people gotta leave, and this and that. You can't get all these vehicles in and out of there. It's a safety problem with one entrance going in and out of this property, with all the number of glamping tents, cabins, housing, restaurants, bars, everything else going in the structure. I am concerned about the water. I have wells on my property, I'm 500 feet deep on a couple of them, and 4 gallons a minute. I'm trying to water cattle off these things. Well, I'm not using the bathroom, they're not flushing the toilets, they're cows. You know, y'all want us to, state of Virginia, everybody wants us to fence off our creeks and stuff, to keep the cows out of the creeks. Well, we got creeks and streams all going through this property here, what keeps them from playing in it, and one of the site plan, not a site plan, whatever, Mr. Webb drew up about where all the glamping tents goes, it's like that, when the drain field's close to the stream, and I don't know about this stream, but the stream comes through my property, and it's been known to get out of the banks every once in a while. But I guess it won't get out of the banks, on top of their drain field, I guess. So, I'm still concerned about having a hotel adjacent to my piece of property. And I wish that the board would listen to the residents in the area and, you know, help us out a little bit. If it's, you know, if he can do 120 glamping tents on 189 acres, I got 277 acres. And I might just go ahead and put glamping tents up and cabins on my piece of land, because I think if you can make, you know, $40 million investment you can put in here, there's no way we can do $40 million in farming. So we might as well put glamping tents up and cabins and join the neighborhood, I reckon. Thank you.
Remember my other two thoughts? One of them was, you know, another beautiful site for a glamping community would be right down there in Etland, back behind Cardy's house. That'd be a nice place to put one. And the other thing is, I'm disappointed in the planning commission, except for Mr. Graves, thank you for voting against it, to punting this to the supervisors. I think it's obvious here that enough of the residents close by don't want this, and it doesn't fit our community.
Hi, I'm Janice Seekley at 359 Kirtley, 367 Kirtley, and 329 Kirtley. We have the Stonehouse Christmas tree farm. My one question, I noticed it says that now there will be 48 individuals being full-time all year round. Originally, we were told this would be from April to November, so it appears it's going to be traffic all year round. Plus, when you throw, I mean, we do add traffic to the, we'll be at first, and then our farm adds traffic in December. So we will be throwing more traffic on Kirtley Road at those time of years, that time of year. So that, my huge concern is the traffic on Kirtley Road. I am very concerned. You're over tripling, really quadrupling it on certain days. The road is not made to withstand that kind of traffic. It doesn't feel that wide, like, they were talking there, we have kids that walk that road. People from Prince Michelle walk that road that are staying in the little cabins. People we don't know that are walking that road with dogs, with animals, and we don't know. So I know they have to be coming from Prince Michelle. So please take into consideration the traffic you will be putting on a little tiny rural road with a lot of houses on it. Would you put it in the middle of Melbourne? I think that's my question I'm going to ask. Would you really put something like this coming in? And yes, I was the one that Googled it. I went to Culpeper quite a few times. Every time it brought me back, I was using Google Maps. It brought me turning onto 612 down Route 631. Every time. I went and sat in front of it. I Googled Old Rag. It took me north on Kirtley Road to 29 or to Hoover Road. Culpeper, it took me north on Kirtley Road every time, and I was sitting right in front where you want to put the entrance, which, here again, I don't think we're taking Ms. Newton into consideration. That driveway is literally right there. Her driveway's here, the driveway. And I think the project would be great, but not coming in and out where it's coming in and out. It's just, it's not a feasible place to put it just because of traffic. And our wells. Thank you.
Other public comment? Other public comment? Mr. Wills?
Good afternoon, Mike Wills again. This is just clarification, just asking a question. The numbers you were reading off of were totally different than the numbers that are up there. I just want to know which numbers we're looking at
Off the advertisement.
off the advertisement.
First page of the packet,
Okay,
or second for the planning commission.
okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Teresa O'Donnell again. I just have one other comment. The buffer that he's allowing around the property does not take into consideration Karen Newton's property. Her driveway will be right next to the entrance. You're not giving her any buffer. A little shrubbery is not going to protect her property from people crossing over it, from headlights coming in and out, and you're not giving her even a 10-foot hardly buffer along the side of her property. So you need to take that into consideration as well.
Other public comment? Other public comment? Do we have anybody online? Nobody, all right. All right, hearing no more public comment, back to the board. Who has comments on this, or what would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a set of simple comments I'd like to make.
Please.
For the public record. You know, the concept of this, I don't have a problem with. It's the details that I do. And this is a high concentration. We're actually talking about essentially building a small town here. And I think that the traffic, the noise, and the environmental impact is going to be greater than what's being posited by the applicant and the county planner. And I feel that there is not only a lack of benefit to the overall county in the balance of things, but also think that it is a detrimental project to the county and particularly the folks that live in that area.
All right. Other comments and thoughts?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so, yeah, Mr. Sheets, you know I'd be up at that mic if they were trying to put a unit like this, you know, in Atlant, and, you know, I'd be fighting for what I wanted. But I was on the planning commission for 9 years looking at all this stuff, and I've been on the board for 4. So 13 years I put in, and I'm a big, give a lot of consideration to property rights. You know, you own your property, you get to do, you know, what you want to with it, you know, to a certain extent. So I have a hard time, you know, stopping people from using their property. That is, you know, when it's appropriate. And so our comprehensive plan, we're talking about this being an agricultural area. As Mr. Helmy pointed out, there are a number of businesses there. And the comprehensive plan, if you look it up now in the Route 29 Business Corridor Study that was done, well, the 29 Business Corridor Study was done about 8 years ago, and it's an exhibit to the current comprehensive plan that was done 5 years ago. And it lays out that a mile on either side of 29 would basically, is our business corridor. And basically, it's saying that the planning commission and board and county would look favorably upon businesses within that mile on either side. Now, we're redoing the comp plan now, and I think a mile is too much. So I'm going to suggest that we lower it, but still, half mile or whatever. So that is their business corridor. So this fits the comprehensive plan. I think Ligon laid out, I guess you look on page 5, what the advantages, the benefits to the county are. There's going to be a substantial amount of property tax, transit occupancy tax, machinery and tools tax, et cetera, and not to mention, you know, the people that will be coming to the county. And our comprehensive plan also speaks a lot to tourism. And then I want to look at and we also get this a lot, is goal 1 in the comprehensive plan says to preserve, protect, and enhance the natural beauty, rural character, the air and water quality of Madison County, and sustain agriculture and forest as the county's primary land use. Okay? It doesn't say only land use, it says primary, and that is what we all want. That's what I want, and I feel like I can say that for everybody in this room. But it does say primary. We've got to have businesses in this county. We've got one of the prettiest counties anywhere. This spot, I don't know how many of you all were here when we denied Mr. Helmy on the Ford Shop Road. Was there anybody out there that was here during that? Kevin? Huh? There you go. Now, we laid out all the issues during that discussion and subsequent denial, in which Mr. Helmy has come back and, in my opinion, has checked all the boxes that that we had concerns with. So now let's talk about, I mean, he's already said there were not going to be any events. And when you talk about there's going to be a lot of noise after hours or noise at any time, if Mr. Helmy is going to command the amount of money per night, per day, whatever you want to call it, for this experience, he is going to have this policed, because that's not what his customers are going to be here for. They're not here to party down. They're here to come to the country, enjoy some peace and quiet, and go hit the Shenandoah National Park and White Oak Falls and Old Rag and that sort of thing. So if he let that happen, I think I don't think his business model supports that. So the quality of the experience is based on quiet and nature. He has proffered or conditioned an undisturbed buffer minimum of 100 feet. And let's see, what else did I have on here? Okay, so we're adding we would like to add the tar and chips if we go with that. No event, height of buildings and items like that are in our ordinance. So if you want to read the ordinance, you'll see that sort of thing is already defined in our ordinance, the maximum height. And it seems to me over the last couple of months, we have started conflating the special use permit with a site plan. And a site plan is more objective, where, a special use permit could be somewhat subjective. And it feels like we're letting the site plan bleed over into it sometime. Although having a conceptual site plan like we have as part of this is very important to have an idea of what we're approving. But anyhow, I'm impressed by this proposal, this application, and I'm in favor.
All right, other comments?
With all due respect, Cardy, I don't think Mr. Helmy owns this property. I do believe in property rights. And I understand your business model, you have to see if it even play out before you do it, but I believe in property rights for the people that own the property.
All right, other comments?
Well, I've got about 2 pages of notes scattered here and there, so I'm gonna scatter it around. When we get elected to this position, we take an oath to uphold the zoning laws of the county for the safety and health of all of the citizens. That's what we're supposed to do. We can like every one of you out there and appreciate everything you say, but we can't always vote it down just because you don't want it in your backyard. When I bought my house, my front yard ran all the way over to northbound 29. There was no southbound. The highway department came through, they took it all. I barely have a front yard. Did I like that? You're damn right I didn't. But I knew when I moved there that these things can happen. Just because we own a piece of property doesn't mean that no one can ever move near us or have any business. Mr. Helmy has done everything we've asked him to do, and probably some more than we've asked him to do, actually. But he has checked every box. I hear all this about 500 and 600 cars going down that road. There's not going to be any 500 or 600 cars a day going down that road. It just wouldn't make any sense. You talk about these little fire pits. They're not bonfires, they're little fire pits. So I seriously doubt that they're gonna explode into a forest fire. And why does everyone think all these people are gonna be trespassing on your property? They're not here to trespass on your property. They're here to have an enjoyable weekend or a couple days. I don't care if they drive a Tesla, a Bentley, a Rolls Royce, or Model T Ford. That's no reason to think that they're not going to be good neighbors when Mr. Helmy has them on his property. We had this same issue with Cresare, and we had to vote the same way. It was a good project. She did everything she was supposed to do, and there was no reason to not let her have her business. We need this business. It's clean, again. No smokestacks, no public water, no public sewer. So I'm in favor of passing it through.
I sympathize with everybody on why they don't want it in their backyard. I mean, it's clear. I understand. We heard it on Ford Shop. We sat in the high school auditorium until about 4 a.m. on the Cresare deal. We've seen these. We understand. The problem is that we do need business in Madison. 7-Eleven is in the top 10 restaurants in Madison County. It is horrible, horrible. Multiple people have here stated that Orange and Culpeper are going to get a lot of the business ramifications from this and benefits. They will. I agree. We need business in Madison, like desperately. I'm glad to see the Cake Crumbs place open up. That's at least a little variety other than McDonald's and Tasty Freeze for breakfast. No location's perfect. Y'all are on 29. We went through the exact same thing with Mr. Helmy previously. Exact same. A lot of the same arguments. That one had a floodplain. That was a challenge. Going to the comments about the drain fields, health department's not going to let them put it in floodplains or where it's going to flood or any of that. They are stringent upon this. They're just a step below DEQ. He's got a proffer list, and just for the clarity of the proffer list, number 15 states that there will be a 100-foot buffer on his on the main piece of property, 33-9E. Going to Mr. Sheed's comment about buying property around the entrance, that piece of land, which is the entrance, not stated with the specific tax map, only has the evergreen shrubs shall be planted on both sides of the driveway connecting. And now he said he will go ahead and tar and chip or pave that. I have a hard time with property rights. I agree, he doesn't own that right now. In the same regard, it's been on the market for a while. What are we just saying that any land in Madison County can only be ag farming or residences? I mean, that's really what we're saying here. The other one, Mr. Jewett this week has been taking a survey. I went and talked to Lucky Grays about how business model is. Hoover Ridge has a problem right now, the park out here next to the primary school, on getting tournaments to come to it. Why is that? There's no place for people to stay. There's none. Grays Mountain Lodge does a good job. There's a handful of other ones. The Airbnbs definitely fill some type of that void. There isn't anywhere to stay in Madison. Mr. Jewett will go right with me, is that the market is not saturated. It has slowed down and normalized to the point back before COVID. During COVID, people wanted to be out here. It was pretty heavy. The trespass I have a hard time with. I've got a bunch of land in Madison. The people that I know trespass, they see me in McDonald's, they see me in Madison. I know who they are. Normally they're out there bear hunting, deer hunting. I know, it's fine. Most of these people from out of town, I don't know if they just can't find a charge for the Tesla or what. They drive way too slow and just kind of don't know where they're going. I sympathize with the NIMBY comments all day long. But this Madison needs something to go on here. I mean, it is sad driving down Main Street and not seeing anything. And especially out in some of the little communities that used to have a bunch of business. Y'all have the saloon out there in Leon. I mean, what's going on there? It used to be a rock shop. It was a puppy mill for a minute before the county caught on and kicked them out, rightfully so. We need some place. I remember getting ice cream there. You can't even do that anymore. We're glad to see Willa Hill there. I mean, that's great. She worked through the whole process. It was miserable. 6 months at least. And then it caught fire the first night. Even worse. We need business. I'm sorry to disappoint y'all. And we're sympathetic, but that's where I'm at. What would y'all like to do?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case number SU-05-23-07 as recommended by the Planning Commission, which included the verbiage to add hard surface entrance under number
That's number 10.
10 of the conditions. And my motion is to include all the 19 conditions included in the packet presented at the May 3rd, 2023 joint meeting.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
All right.
Again, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify the vote, and the only reason I do this.
This may
Absolutely.
come back. I believe it was Mr. Jewett and Mr. Dawson who voted against the proposal, and Mr. Yowell, Mr. Jackson, and Ms. Hoffman voted in favor.
Mr. Weekly, we have any information and correspondence?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Public comment again. Public comment again. Public comment.
Yeah, man.
All right, not seeing any. Yes, sir.
I grew up in Butler County, and it became known as the woodchuck capital of the world. So y'all have set a precedent now. How many more of these sites are we gonna have in Madison County? And who's the next group of people that y'all are gonna put it behind?
Yes, sir.
EJ Mills, who's gonna clean up the mess that they leave every day down the roads? Who's gonna repave my Kirkley Trail when they tear it up? County gonna take care of that? I didn't hear an answer. No answer?
This is public comment. There's no answer.
Oh,
The
okay.
answer is on the roads.
That's the way it should have been before, no answer.
The answer on the
None
roads
of
is
y'all would have
VDOT
wanted
is.
this in your
That's fine.
backyard.
That's fine.
It's all about the dollars and the cents. That's all it's about. What about when I see that person trespassing in my yard? I'm gonna call the police officer. Somebody's coming out. I'm sure everybody else is gonna do the same thing. What about when we see that fire that we think's getting away? We're calling the fire department. Taxpayers' money. My taxpayers' money's gonna be paying it, not his. What about when that one fire does get away?
One at a time, and we've got to identify.
What about when that one fire does get away? Too many businesses in the agriculture area. That's a shame.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Do you have public comment? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Karen Newton, I'm at 93 Kirtley. I just need to know how long he really plans on staying here once this is all done. He'll walk away from it. He's not gonna be here. He's gonna do it and walk away. He will not stay here. What are you gonna do then? Just saying.
Hi, Kathy Mills. I'm still a little confused about the buffer because there's 50 feet on the other side of that property that you're making the entrance. If there's a 100-foot buffer, 100 subtract 50, I don't understand that.
No, ma'am.
I don't
It
get
was,
that.
I tried to clarify it on condition number 15, the tract 33-9E, which is the 189 acres. It has a 100-foot buffer all the way around it, as proffered. The line says, it says, additionally, evergreen shrubs shall be planted on both sides of the driveway connecting the site to Kirtley Road to reduce the impact of vehicle headlights on adjacent properties. That's the narrow tract that you're referring to. It only has the evergreen buffer on both sides and now a tar and chip driveway.
Okay. Then, if we could please look and consider James City Road where the property goes out to that road, and there's no residence right on top of each other. If you're gonna approve this and you're gonna say you want to respect us for where we're at, James City Road, the property goes out there, and it's a wider, you can even see it on the map, it's a wider area, and there's no intrusiveness on each side. There's no homes right there. And it would make for, I would think, a much better entrance, instead of just this little tiny spot, since you're gonna approve it, you know. But just to take that into consideration, because there's no family home right there. So that would be something that needs to be considered. And if there's a spring down through there, build a bridge. You're spending all this money anyway. Build a couple bridges. That'd be really pretty. Thank you.
Other public comment? All right, hearing no more public comment, we don't have a closed session. What would y'all like to do?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
You're entitled to your opinion.
Mr. Elliott, how you doing?